Okay, so today I'm going to do one of my very first tutorials here on how to use Lightroom CC 2015. That's Creative Cloud 2015 by Adobe. So here's what we're going to do. I have a photograph here that I took at the Tulsa Zoo area. Is getting towards sunset. And I just snapped it real quick. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't think it would necessarily turn out. And I was actually ended up being pleasantly surprised by the result. And you know, this is kind of the whole point behind editing. It's not necessarily to get you to go out and buy some full frame mirrorless camera, you know, like you know, spend a bunch of money on a camera. You can do this with your iPhone photos too. Everything I show you here is just going to be real basic, simple steps that you can use to kind of get that moment back. You know, your photographs typically in their, you know, raw state don't show what you saw at that time. So these things I'm going to show you are going to help you get some of that feeling back so you can relive those memories day in, day out. You can show your family, show your friends, and they're going to get to visually see a depiction of what you experienced at that moment. So here's the picture here on the screen. And let me just show you real quick. I've already done this on this photo. I've already edited it, but we're going to go through all the steps of what I did to make this. So here you see this is the final end product. This is what I ended up liking there at the end, and that's where I stopped. So we're going to start with this. One of the very first steps that we're going to do is you know, I'm going to take my highlights and I'm going to drag them all the way to the bottom. And on the shadows, I'm going to open them all the way up. So now the picture looks kind of funny right now, I know, but bear with me. It's kind of flat, no detail, nothing like that. But here's where the next thing comes in. I'm going to teach you a key command, and I'm sorry for Windows users. I don't use any Windows products. I use all Apple, so I can't really tell you exactly your keystrokes. They should be really similar. And actually on the Mac, the Option key is also the Alt key on Windows. So whenever you hear me say Option, I mean Alt. Alright, so I'm going to hit the Option key. I'm going to go here to my whites slider bar. And whenever I actually start clicking on it, you'll see it goes black. And that's because I'm going to find the point that my whites start getting clipped. And you'll see these little dots come up here. You know, we can clip it way out and just fry the entire photo, but we're not going to do that. We're actually going to see just when we get a few dots, we're going to back it right back down till we can't see anything, and you know, there we go. That's pretty good. You're going to do the same thing with the black point, except we're going to go the opposite direction. Now with the black point, I actually like to leave a little bit of it, and my computer's lagging because I'm recording the screen, but I like to leave just a little bit where you can see it. Just clip those blacks off just a little bit, and that's going to give you that contrast back that we lost when we opened up the highlights and the shadows. And in fact, you can actually go over here, add a little bit more. I'll probably add say about 10 in contrast. Well, 12's fine. On this, I might actually go ahead and open up the exposure just a bit. You know, and this is all kind of done by feel, for me anyway. I just kind of look at the photo and try to look at what I've got. And let me actually drop that bar down so we get a little bit bigger view. Alright, so for this photo, I'm also going to drop my clarity down. Now, if you increase your clarity, you're going to bring out a lot of those high points in the light. You'll get kind of some of that back, and that's great if you're doing HDR photography. And in a lot of circumstances, I will actually, you know, add just a little bit of clarity. But in this case, I'm actually going to minus just a little bit. I want to give this a nice, this will give your photo a little bit softer feel. So I've just reduced it just a little bit there, and I'm going to bump my vibrance up just about to there. I'd say is probably good. And your taste may vary. You don't have to go exactly what I'm saying to do here on the colors and the tones and things like that. This is, you know, photography is a very individualized experience, and each photographer has their own kind of feel to their photos. So let me find where my focus point was. Now this, again, this was a very quick shot that I didn't actually intend to do anything with. But it turned out actually pretty nice. So let's find where my focus point was, which was somewhere right in here. I was using open aperture, so that makes, you know, some of my background actually look a little blurry or soft, and that's just because my focus was actually up here on this grass. So we'll continue on, and what I'm doing here is I'm just finding a nice point where I can get a reference for my sharpening. So I'm just going to sharpen this up. I'm going to put it probably about 85. And a nice rule of thumb is you take your sharpening, say you have 100 points to use. I've used 82, and I'm going to make it 80. Well, here, since I can't be that accurate, we'll just type it in, 85. And then I'm going to go down here to noise reduction. I have 15 points left to use. And you don't have to use this. I was shooting really low ISO at 64, which is lower than most cameras, most other cameras go. But I'm going to go ahead and put it at 15. And that's for some of these underexposed areas. We'll sometimes get some noise, and that ought to knock that out. So, the other thing, sharpening. I'm going to hit that Option key again on the sharpening, and I'm going to actually put this mask on it. You see this masking right here. That tells the computer what parts of the photo you want to sharpen. I don't really want any of the sky sharpened. I don't really want any of the dark areas sharpened. So anything black isn't getting sharpened. The white points are getting sharpened. So just as a reference. And this is something you can do. Again, my camera has profile corrections built into the lens and the camera itself. So whenever I plug them into Photoshop, it automatically does these corrections. You'll see around the edges there's a little bit of distortion, vignetting, and by doing that, it makes the entire scene a little more flat and takes out that curve of the glass, as I like to call it. So that may or may not be something that applies to you. So the other thing you can do, let's say you shoot your picture at some random off angle. You can either hit auto, which sometimes works really well, and actually that didn't turn out too bad. Yeah, I think we'll leave it on auto. If not, you can always come in here to like your rotate if you're at a weird angle, and you can rotate this around to wherever you need. Just hit constrain crop, and it knocks out those little white pieces that you saw show up there. But I'm actually just gonna kick it back on the auto because it did just fine. So yeah, that pretty much covers all of our basic color, highlights, all that stuff right off the bat. I'm done with all that. Now we get to do things. We get to correct our composition, and we're going to add a few little points of interest to add some drama to the overall photo. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually I shot this photo, thought, oh, these bench seat backs here, we're going to make my foreground. Well, I don't like that. So I'm actually going to make that grass my foreground now, and just crop it up to where the grass is now my foreground element. Here's my foreground element. I've got my middle ground, and then the actual sunset and the sky in the back, which, although the sky up here is not that interesting, is now my background. I do have a little bit of a foreground element here where there's a tree limb in the way. I actually like that. I think it adds some interest, and we'll leave it. So, got that done. The next kind of step that I'm going to do is this little guy here, this little rectangle, is a gradient filter. I don't use gradient filters on my camera. Instead, I will add them actually in post-processing. A little bit easier, a lot less stuff to carry around. But you just, to create a gradient filter, you just click on that, drag it down, and to wherever you want. The further you drag it down, the more feathering you get. And with the, let me actually turn my Wi-Fi off so I don't have any more emails coming in. the more feathering you get. So the longer it takes for this overall mask to reach the bottom. So you see there it's a very gradual change where if I drag this up, it's a very short, sudden change. So we're going to make it real nice and gradual. You want the fullest effect up here is where I'm wanting it. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to hit the Option key. We're going to hit Reset. You know, if we hit the Option key, it changes from Effect to Reset. Just click it, and all your sliders will reset. Now you can use this here and actually set, like, go to exposure, and you can actually change your exposure levels from there. It'll have a preset for you. I don't really care to do that because it ends up usually I end up changing a couple things anyway. So I just always reset it, and then I set everything like I want. So I'm going to take my exposure, I'm going to drop it down a little bit because I want this photo to kind of close in on the area I want you to focus on, which is this majaz going on right here. So I've dropped the exposure just a little bit, not a whole lot. And actually what I'm going to do, just to kind of add a little bit of interest to the sky since it's kind of so plain, I'm going to make it a little more blue. It was kind of gray out, but there was still a nice blue tint to it with the yellow sun. So, and the camera just didn't really capture that very nicely. So I added a little bit of blue there, add maybe a little magenta, and yeah, I think that works well. So now, the one thing I don't like is now it's taken and it's covered up some of my tree with that gradient filter. It applies it across the whole image. So I'm going to take right up here in the mask toolbar area, there's something called brush. So I'm going to hit brush, and then I'm going to use that all ever so important Option key, and I'm going to hit it, and it's going to change it to a minus. So what it's going to do is it's going to take that change that I've applied to the overall image, the top of the image, and it's going to subtract that from the areas that I choose. So I'm just going to paint this on, and I'm just going to add just a little bit of areas that were affected. I'm just going to take that filter right back out because I want this tree to be really amazing in the photo. And I'm going to kind of do that to this over here. You can see how much of a difference that filter made, and we didn't even, you know, apply that much to it. I'm not going to get over here in this stuff because I really don't want to mess up my sky, like causing streaks or glowing behind anything. So a light touch is best, and actually I'll expand that a little bit there. Okay, so now that's done, and what I'm going to do here is, I think I'm actually going to add another gradient filter. To do that, you just come over here, hit New. That's going to leave that one there. That little gray dot is yours to play with later. But I'm going to actually just throw one here on the bottom too, and I'll make this one a little bit shorter. I want the effect to kind of be kind of sudden, I guess I should say, because we're just going to be real gentle. We're going to subtract some exposure, and we're taking that out in the bottom. Again, that draws the eye to the brightest part of the photo, which is this. So I'm not going to do any other brushing to that one. We're done with the gradient filters as far as I'm concerned. The next thing I'm going to do, working my way over, is I'm going to add a radial filter, and that's just a circle here, and I'm going to drag it right over the center of the sun. I don't want it that far down on the grass, so we'll just put it there. That's a nice area to put that in. You can kind of reshape this however you want. And actually, I might shut that down just a little bit. There we go. That ought to give us a nice effect. So I'm going to set my feathering to probably about 80. And I'm going to invert the mask, because right now all these changes I'm going to make are going to affect the entire rest of the picture, not what's inside, and that's not what I want. I want to affect the inside of the image. So I got a little bit of an exposure boost there. Well, let's take it down just a bit. Say just about 0.25 to 0.30 would do plenty for what I'm doing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add some yellow up here on this slider. Just adding just a little bit. Going to add a little bit of magenta, and I think that's actually probably pretty good. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to take, I'm done with that. So let's just close that out. Done with that. We added a nice glow, add some yellow to look, to the background, all that good stuff. So now what I need to do is add some points of interest. That's the point. That's the main focus of the image. But I want your eye to follow this whole thing around and really draw it in. So I'm gonna take my brush. This is your brush here. You just click on it. Bam! Opens up a menu just like all our other masks. And this is just a mask that you can paint on wherever you want. So for this, I'm going to add some yellow. That's probably good on exposure. I'm going to add some exposure, add some yellow, maybe add some magenta. And I'm going to come down here. I'm going to make sure that I'm at 100 feathering. Flow and density at about 80. And I don't think I'm going to do any auto masking on this one. We're just going to see how it kind of turns out. So I'm just going to add a nice little beam of sun there. And I didn't really do that. But, just kind of make this a nice little area there. And then I'm going to hit this tree as well, because this is my favorite part of the whole image, are these colors. And there were so many like little beams of sunlight coming through this thing, and you can just pick and choose and kind of add just a few dots here and there. And I'm actually going to make my brush real big and really get this whole area. In fact, I might just run up this whole side of this tree. And that adds a nice just pop to it that is missing from the photo otherwise. And so you can kind of recover some of the things that you feel like are lost. And you know what? I'm going to give this branch up here just a little dot as well. And I feel like this grass really just shone. I mean, it was just shining. So we'll give it that. So yeah, I mean, it's just these little things that you can do. Now let's, this picture's done. I mean, it's done. You've added some nice light to the whole thing. And gave a little bit of depth and kind of brought it back to life, whereas this is what we had before. Very dark, you couldn't see the colors of the trees, you couldn't really see anything. This is the image straight out of the camera, how it was. Now this is still cropped obviously, but this is the end result. I mean, that didn't take very much time. You do it enough times, it'll become second nature, and you can knock these photos out in 5 or 10 minutes and really have be able to share your experiences visually a lot better with your family, with your friends, to the people that you really care about, that you really care about, who you're sharing these things with. So that's my tips. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be trying to get at least one of these up a week if I can. Starting out, I might do it once every 2 weeks, but next time I'm actually going to go out and take a bunch of photos with my iPhone, see what I can come up with, and we're going to edit them together. I'm going to give you the raw files. I'm actually going to give you the photos that I took that you can download and actually follow along with this. So I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to showing everybody a few more things. So have a good one. We'll talk to you later.